I'm extremely terrified, but thankful at the same time. Terrified because I got abducted by a psycho freak, but thankful because along with me, I could save 2 more lives from receiving the sickest and most painful death. My name is Kyle, and I will never be able to celebrate Christmas with an innocent mind for the rest of my life. Every year, the people of my town gather in the huge community hall for a long-awaited Christmas party. We have a small fair in the garden of the community hall. We eat all the chocolates that we want. We sing carols, and toddlers perform little plays about the miracle of Christmas. It was the night of Christmas Eve. We all gathered in the community hall. Kids were running around, dressed in Santa hats. A fat Santa Claus was roaming around, tolling his big shiny bell. Christmas songs were playing over the speakers. I loved the entire scene. I walked into a stall in the corner that was selling sugar cookie rainbow bars. All the kids gathered near the stall, and the owner was having a tough time handling them. I'm a bit short for 10 years old, so it was becoming more difficult for me to grab a rainbow bar for myself while managing the crowd. After being pushed and shoved like a rag doll, I left the stalls in frustration, spent my money on a silly little keychain instead, and sat on a bench some distance away. The bench was under a big tree that was covered in snow, creating a shadowy atmosphere in that particular spot. Everyone was having fun, except me. I was thinking of going home, playing video games, when I heard rustling footsteps behind me. Turning around, I didn't see anyone, but slowly, a face came out of the darkness. "You don't seem to enjoy Christmas very much, huh?" The person speaking came out of the dark and sat right next to me. He was a man whose age I couldn't guess due to his weird outfit. The man was wearing a Willy Wonka costume and had a silver cane in his hand, just like I'd seen in the movies. But unlike the funny Willy Wonka in the movie, this man looked like a creepier version of the fictional character. His eyes were wide and still, like a dead fish. There were dark circles around them, which made his face even spookier. His pointy nose, accompanied by a sharp jaw, hinted at something going on inside his mind. He licked his dry lips and said, "Aren't you going to answer my question?" "No, I'm just bored." "Who are you? I've never seen you here before." "Well, my house is inside those woods. I enjoy being in the crowd a lot." Considering his words in the moment, I said, "Yeah, you don't say." "What's your name?" "I'm Kyle. Why are you dressed like Willy Wonka? I mean, it's not Halloween, you know." "I just find myself quite similar to his character." "You mean you have a chocolate factory too?" "Yes, and there are tons of sugar cookie rainbow bars and lots of other Christmas candies as well. Would you like to come for a visit?" I would have refused him right away, but at the moment, I wanted to get out of there, so I agreed to his proposal, and he started to walk into the woods. The forest floor was covered with crystal white snow. The pale moonlight made the scene look like a dream. "You still didn't tell me your name." "You ask so many questions. Anyway, you can call me Mr. Wonka." "Come on, we both know that can't be your real name." "But that's what you will call me." "Okay, Mr. Wonka." I immediately got silent because I didn't want to irritate him further. I really wanted some candy, so I followed him quietly. He stopped in front of a big house. Though the house was huge, it seemed abandoned to me. Saplings and wild ivy were growing on the wall. The dull texture of the wood smelt soggy and rotten. "This is where you live?" "It only looks old from the outside. Come on, let's go in." He walked a few steps ahead of me and opened the door of the house. There was pitch black darkness on the other side of the door, and I realized what a huge mistake I'd made by following this man into such a secluded area. My parents didn't know I was there, and seeing the condition of the house, there was no doubt he was planning something really bad for me. I think I better go. I'll come some other time. My parents will be worried." "Where do you think you're going? You can leave when I say you can." Before I could scream, he hit me hard with his metal cane and knocked me out on the floor. When I came back to my senses, my head was throbbing in pain. I found myself sitting in a big dining room, tied to a pillar. In front of me, there were 2 other pillars as well. and 2 other kids were tied to them too. Both of them looked severely dehydrated. They were younger than me. Their dirty clothes indicated that they'd been there like this for a long time. Rise and shine, little ones. Why? Why are you doing this? What do you want? Questions and questions and questions. He splashed water on my face and said, "You can all leave when your parents bring me the money without giving me any trouble. No one worries about spending money at Christmas, so why the hell is it so difficult for me to get my share?" The cops will find you, you know. My parents are probably looking for me right now, and they'll come here. Are you threatening me, Kyle? I don't think you will, after you see this. He pressed a button on the wall, and with a rustling sound of chains being pulled, an iron cage that I hadn't noticed until now came down from the tall ceiling of the house. In that iron cage lay the body of a kid, probably my age, except he or she wasn't alive anymore. The kid's face was beyond recognition. At first glance, one might have felt like the kid died from burning, but there was some gooey, foul-smelling liquid stuck to its corpse, like superglue. The psycho smiled and pointed to a big cauldron to my left. You see that? That's my secret chocolate recipe. If you try to do anything that you shouldn't, I'll throw you alive inside that boiling hot chocolate, just like this little menace. This is what you get when you act smart with Mr. Wonka. After saying this, he went out of the room, and I sat there sweating in fear. The faces of my parents flashed in front of my eyes as I realized I might never see them again. But then I remembered I'd bought that keychain from the fair. The keychain had a sharp edge, and my hands were tied with old, torn clothes. Without wasting a single second, I took out the keychain from my back pocket and started rubbing it on the knot binding my hands. After a minute of relentless trying, I finally succeeded and set myself free. I could have run away and saved myself, but I wanted to save those 2 kids and punish this man for what he did to the dead kid. A plan kicked in my mind. I slowly walked to the boiling cauldron and dipped a piece of ragged cloth into the foul-smelling chocolate. I spread the liquid chocolate all over the floor so that it created a slippery slope. Then, I patiently waited behind a pillar for the freak to come out. After 5 minutes of waiting, I heard his footsteps, and he came out. Realizing I'd set myself free, he started screaming, "You little piglet! I know you're still in here, 'cause I locked the front door, and there's no other way out. You better come out, or I'll make your life a nightmare." He was screaming as he looked behind the pillars for me. As soon as he came to check the pillar right next to the boiling cauldron, I jumped up and pushed him with all my strength, piercing my eardrums with a spine-chilling scream. He fell into the boiling pot of chocolate. His flesh started to melt away, but he still tried to get out. He flailed his hands in the air, trying to escape this inhumane death trap, but I just watched him die. When he stopped screaming and flailing, I realized he was dead. Not having a key, I started looking for a window that wasn't boarded up, through which I could get out and help these 2 other dying kids. Luckily, there was one uncovered window. I shattered the glass with a strong kick, jumped out, and ran back to the fairground. By then, everyone was calling out my name. My mom was running everywhere in a panic looking for me. Seeing me come out of the woods with terror in my face, they realized something horrible had happened. The cops were called, and the kids were rescued, but I'm still shaking. God knows what would have happened if I hadn't had that keychain. Dying in a boiling pot of chocolate, and on Christmas Eve, that would have been the most gruesome way to go.
For Rhonda Goulet, the meaning of Christmas has forever changed 27 years ago. Her 18-year-old sister, Danita, was one of 6 people shot and killed over 3 days around Christmas in 1992. 4 young people embarked on a shooting rampage that left 6 people dead, 2 others injured, and impacted scores of others, friends, relatives, and members of the public in countless ways. Starting as petty robberies that netted a plaid coat, a pair of sneakers, and $44, the crime escalated to something else: joy killings. According to the detectives of this case, they were just killing people randomly for nothing. Literally nothing. There was not even a motive in these cases. It was just for fun. The 4 people convicted of the killings were part of a group that spent most days bumming money on courthouse stairs until they graduated to something much worse. There was the Christmas tree lighting on Courthouse Square across the street. As people shopped and celebrated, they would have never imagined what was about to happen. A band of teenagers were looking for trouble. Laura Taylor, Marvelous Keene, Heather Matthews, and DeMarcus Smith called themselves the Downtown Posse. They were estranged from their families and looking for trouble. "Let's get some drama in our lives," Taylor, a 16-year-old runaway, said to the group. On Christmas Eve, they began the worst crime spree in Dayton history. The first victim was Joseph Wilkerson. The girls lured their way into his Prescott Avenue home, promising sex, and the 34-year-old General Motors worker was shot and killed. The posse then partied in Wilkerson's house over the next 3 days. They ate his food and drove his cars while he lay dead in a bedroom. That same night, they shot Danita Goulet, 18, who was using a payphone outside a neighborhood market in West Dayton. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police said Goulet was robbed of her gym shoes, jacket, and book bag. "All she said was, 'Don't shoot me,' and they shot her anyway," said Rhonda Goulet, the victim's sister. "She gave them everything she had. I just wish they would have spared my sister." On Christmas Day, the body of 19-year-old Richard Maddox was discovered in a car. He had been shot in the head. Detectives later found out that Maddox was the former boyfriend of Laura Taylor. Jeffrey Wright was also shot that day outside a home on Yuma Place. Despite 4 bullets, he survived. The posse went into the Short Stop Mini-Mart on December 26 and shot Sarah Abraham, who was working in a family business that holiday weekend. The 38-year-old mother died 5 days later in the hospital. A store customer who was shot, Jones Pettis, survived. At first, Dayton homicide detectives did not know that these crimes were all connected. "Really, the first thing that made the connection for us was the ammunition," said retired Dayton homicide detective Doyle Burke. "Then you start to worry and you figure out that we've got a person or persons that are probably not going to stop." Burke said they had no idea who they were looking for. The fact that it was truly stranger on stranger crime, which is the most difficult homicide to solve, there was not even a motive, Burke said. Later, on December 26th, former Dayton Police Sergeant John Huber spotted a stolen car on Kumler Avenue. At the time, he did not know that he was stopping Dayton's spree killers. They all cooperated and put their hands up. I was later to find out from the detectives that Laura Taylor told Marvelous Keene to shoot me, and he wouldn't, said Huber. After so much violence, the gang's capture was fairly uneventful. Smith ran into a nearby house, but was quickly captured, while the other 3, Keene, Matthews, and Taylor, were taken into custody without incident. After the 4 members of the posse were behind bars, Taylor got a visit from a local minister who was concerned that she was only 16 and accused of such terrible crimes. During their visit, Taylor told him about 2 more victims. Police found the bodies of Wendy Cottrell, 16, and Marvin Washington, 19, in a city-owned gravel pit on Ridgely Avenue. Taylor said they were shot because the group thought that they would snitch to the police. Taylor and Matthews are serving life sentences for murder at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, while Smith is serving a life murder sentence at the Mansfield Correctional Institution. On July 21st, 2009, Keene, who was convicted in 5 of the killings, was executed by lethal injection at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville. He had no last words. Keene was not a template killer. He had never been arrested and was a good student, until his older brother was killed while committing a robbery in 1991. That had a profound effect on him, according to a court report. He became depressed, virtually gave up on his educational efforts for a time, and was morose and introspective. Keene moved to California to live with his father, but returned to Dayton in August 1992 after conflicts over money. He walked away from his mother's Dayton home early that December and landed in a flophouse on Yuma Place, across the Great Miami River from downtown Dayton. There, he and his pals connived how to make a quick buck for Christmas. "I wanted to be like them. I wanted to do what they were doing," Matthews said. Detective Burke said that once the killing started, He believes they were all willing participants. They enjoyed it. They lived it. It made them somebody, Burke said. Rhonda Goulet admits that even after 25 years, the holidays are very difficult. I grieve for my family, but I continue to grieve for the other victims' families and also the people who are incarcerated, said Goulet. Anybody's life can either go to the left or the right, so I do. I think about them very often. Goulet said the murder of her sister had a huge impact on her life. The crime led to the breakup of her engagement, the loss of a child, and her mother. 6 years later, my mother passed away prematurely, said Goulet. My mother passed away at 51 years old, and she passed away because of grief. My mother died of a broken heart. Goulet is now an advocate for victims' rights and is working on her master's degree. She said she gets through the holidays by serving her church and feeding the homeless. The group tried to rob another person before targeting Danita Goulet, an 18-year-old high school senior and mother, in a phone booth. Some would call it a case of thrill killing. Others would point to juvenile delinquency, dysfunctional family issues, or just plain bad kids. The identified ringleader would not fit none of these stereotypes and yet decided to go on a murder spree that would shock his community. I always hated Christmas. Most people would probably call me a curmudgeon for saying that, but it's a lot easier to enjoy a winter holiday when you have a warm house to sleep in and a family to spend it with. For those who aren't rich and upper middle class, Christmas is just another cold day during the brutal winter, where your chances of dying from hypothermia in the streets increase exponentially. I can't remember the days when I had a roof over my head. Hell, I'm not sure if those days even exist. I spent every Christmas watching happy people spend time with their families from the shadows of the alleys where they could easily ignore me. The only good thing about Christmas for me was being able to rummage through restaurant dumpsters for other people's leftovers. It never ceases to amaze me how much food people were willing to just throw away while eating out. I had to be fast though, or else the restaurant owner might come to chase me away for messing with their garbage. Why they'd even care about someone taking stuff they'd already thrown out anyways, I'll never understand. One Christmas, as I was looking through a dumpster for some turkey bones to gnaw on, I was approached by an old man. I was ready to run away the moment I saw him, but he stopped me before I could. Wait, lass, I'm not here to hurt you. What do you want then? He spoke calmly to me, but my own words were harsh. It might seem mean, but I didn't survive by myself in the streets for so long, being nice. Just to help a young woman out alone in the cold. My name's Charles. What's yours? Susan? Nice to meet you, Susan. Do you have a home to go to? I did, but the snow ruined my last cardboard box. Oh, I see. Well, would you like a place to sleep for the night? What? I have a house nearby. You could stay in for the night. It's cold out there. You look like you could use a meal, too. Why would you want to help me? Well, it's Christmas, and I'm full of the holiday spirit. Helping out a poor girl in the snow seems like something both Christ and Santa would approve of. My common sense told me to run. No good thing could ever come from going into the house of a stranger who's promising you food. I really wasn't buying his bullshit explanation about the holiday spirit either. But regardless of what my brain thought, my stomach was growling, and the rest of my body wouldn't have lasted much longer out in the snow. It was especially cold that December, and I already found a couple of other homeless people dead and buried in the snow earlier in the month. If I didn't find warmth soon, I would join them. Seeing as how my life couldn't get much worse, and I'd probably die without shelter anyways, I decided to take the old man up on his offer. I followed Charles throughout the city, past smiling people who must have assumed we were just an old man and his granddaughter spending Christmas together. We reached a little two-story house at the end of a nice neighborhood in the city. Charles opened the door with his keys and led me inside. The house was already fully decked out in Christmas decorations, including a grand tree in the living room adorned with shiny bulbs and a golden star at the top. But aside from the traditional Christmas decor, lifelike dolls with closed eyes dressed like elves, also sat upon the shelves. What's with the dolls? Ah, those are my products. I'm a custom doll maker by trade, you see. Business is always good during Christmas. Lots of parents want dolls for their little girls. What's so special about these dolls? A proud smile spread across Charles's face. Children like to play with dolls, but my dolls are the only ones in the world that can play with the children back. How the heck does that work? Charles put a finger to his lips in a shushing gesture. That's a trade secret. But I'll tell you this. To make something this special for children, you need to have the heart of a child. I assumed that he was making a metaphor I didn't get. I couldn't even understand why anyone would buy those creepy dolls in the first place, so I quickly followed Charles out of the living room to get away from their gaze. He led me to the dining room, where the table was set with the kind of Christmas feast I'd only ever seen in billboard commercials. There were plates of honeyed ham, roast beef and potatoes, mince pie, and a gigantic cooked goose at the center of it all. I'd never seen so much food in one place before in my life. Dig in, Susan. Are you sure? Of course. It's because of children like you that I'm able to make a living. Think of this as me giving back to the children for all they've done for my business. Any hesitance I still had left me. I sat down at the table and started gorging myself on the food. Charles went back to the living room and picked out a closed-eye elf doll from the shelf. I'm going to work on this doll some more. I got deadlines to meet after all. In the meantime, help yourself to all the food you like. After that, he disappeared into the basement with the doll, and I continued to stuff my face with food. I almost regained my faith in humanity then. But just before I could get to the Christmas pudding, I felt a tiny hand grab my wrist. I turned and saw a little boy who couldn't have been any older than 5. He wore the same elf outfit the closed-eyed dolls on the shelves did, and it was about the same size too. You need to leave now. What? But Charles told me he's not who you think he is. You have to leave this place for your own sake. The boy let go of my wrist and took a step back. Please, get out and stay safe. Once he finished talking, he scurried out of the dining room with surprising speed. Hey, wait! I rushed after him into the living room, but found no one there with the dolls. I could have sworn one of those closed-eyed dolls looked exactly like him, but I chalked that up to my mind playing tricks on me. I looked through both floors of the house for him, but found nothing but more Christmas decorations and more creepy dolls. Worried that that boy might have been Charles's relative, I went down into the basement to let him know that he was missing. I slowly descended on the stairs to the basement, trying to make my footsteps as soft as possible. I didn't want to accidentally break his concentration and ruin what he was working on by startling him in the middle of it. I will never forget what I saw in that basement. Charles was at a workbench with the elf doll from the living room on it. He didn't seem to be doing any delicate work, so I was about to call out to him but stopped myself just in time when I saw something hanging from a hook beside the workbench. At first I thought it was just another doll, but it was far too big to be one, and its eyes were actually open. After a moment, I realized what it was and had to stifle a scream. It was a corpse of a child about my age, who bore a striking resemblance to the elf doll on the workbench, hung upside down by his feet on a meat hook. Charles brought out a long knife from his workbench and plunged it into the dead child. With surgical precision, he dragged it down over his chest. Then he reached inside and ripped out the child's heart. I watched in silent horror as he opened a compartment in the elf's doll's chest and placed the heart inside. Seconds later, the elf doll's eyes flew wide open with a look of abject terror. Where am I? Charles, what's happened? Before the doll could finish, Charles gagged it with a piece of cloth and threw it into a nearby chest. I'll start conditioning you later. I have to go prepare a sister for you first. I ran out of the house as quickly as I could. I ran to the nearest police station. I usually avoided the police like the plague, But this time around, I decided to make an exception. I told them that I'd been kidnapped by Charles and told him his address, leaving out the parts about the living dolls. I stayed in the police station lobby to answer questions while they checked out Charles's house. Not long after, the TV screen in the police lobby showed a live footage of Charles's house burning. According to the reporter, he set fire to his house the moment police officers came knocking on his door. They went on to talk about his history, how he used to be a sweet family man, beloved by the community, and how much of a shock this was for all those who knew him. They showed a photo of him with his late family on the screen, and I felt my heart fall to my stomach. Standing in between Charles and his wife in that photo was a little boy who looked exactly like the one I met at the house. The one who told me to leave his father's house because he didn't want to see another child meet the same fate he did. I guess in his obsession to create the perfect lifelike dolls, Charles didn't mind testing his methods out with his very own son.